Before we dive in, viewer discretion is advised. This content is for entertainment purposes. What unfolds when a daytime television titan pushes the limit only for a Hollywood icon to push back with devastating force? You are about to bear witness to the single most incendiary live television event in a generation. A showdown so raw, so volatile, it would conclude with one of television's most formidable personalities walking off her own set, never to return. This is the chronicle of how Joy Behar's reign at The View met a stunning, abrupt end during what was slated to be just another celebrity segment. If you believe you've seen on-air tension, you are about to be re-educated. Be sure to join our community and leave a comment with your theory on the unseen maneuver S, because this story possesses layers that will fundamentally alter your perception. A palpable buzz of anticipation filled the View studio as the broadcast resumed. Joy Behar in her customary command chair gave her notes a final fateful shuffle before her eyes locked with the lens of camera 2. She possessed that signature glint, a tell her legions of viewers knew preceded a storm. Welcome back to The View. Joy's unmistakable New York accent carved through the studio air. We're joined by Academy Award winner Kevin Spacey, who is here to discuss his forthcoming independent film. Kevin, it's a pleasure to have you. Kevin Spacey, a study in precision in a charcoal gray suit, sat opposite them, his hands resting calmly. His face was a mask of polite detachment, a meticulously crafted defense that had shielded him through decades of Hollywood warfare. "Thank you for the invitation, Joy," Kevin countered, his voice a smooth, calculated measure. "It is always interesting to be on live television." That word interesting hung in the space between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Joy leaned in, a predator sensing a weakness. Her pen began a quiet rhythmic tapping, a drum beat recognized by her audience as the overture to going off book. "You know, Kevin, I must ask," Joy began, her voice shifting to the specific frequency she used to make the comfortable feel unnerved. "There is a great deal of conversation about accountability in this town. How do you personally define the concept of redemption?" The question landed with the concussive force of a depth charge in a silent pool. The muscle in Kevin's jaw gave a nearly imperceptible twitch, though the professionally engineered smile never faltered. "Well, Joy, I see redemption as being about the work we choose to do moving forward," Kevin articulated with surgical precision. "It is about adding something of value to the creative sphere and dedicating oneself to the craft that brought us all here to begin with. But is it truly so simple?" Joy pressed, her words sharpening. "Can an individual merely declare their own absolution and command the world to march in step with them?" The studio audience fell into a collective breathless silence. It was clear, even to the other co-hosts, that Joy had breached the agreed-upon protocols of the pre-production meeting and was now operating in hostile territory. Kevin slowly uncrossed his legs, leaning back, his composure still a fortress, but his eyes now fixed solely on Joy with an unnerving focus. "I believe, Joy, that we operate in a society that permits people to reconstruct their lives. That is what I am engaged in. A focus on my work and the projects I deem meaningful." "Correct." Joy fired back before the echo of his words could fade. "But what about those who are not afforded the luxury of simply rebuilding?" Her voice began to rise, gaining an edge of righteous fury. "What about the individuals whose trajectories were altered by the actions of certain powerful people in this industry? Is their due merely to be told that someone is now focusing on their craft?" The pressure within the studio had become a physical presence. Camera operators exchanged wide-eyed, frantic glances while in the control booth. The show's producer could be seen gesturing with a silent, escalating panic. But the challenger, Joy, seemed to miss the signal entirely, even as Kevin Unk's entire posture shifted on some unseen axis. The practiced smile evaporated, leaving behind the cold, hard calculus of a man cornered. "I came here today," he began reciting the prepared script to speak on my new film, a piece about the resilience of the human spirit and the power of art. "I am uncertain of the specific insinuations you are making, but I believe it is paramount that we avoid making assumptions about the inner lives of others." "Oh, I'm not assuming anything," Joy countered, the full weight of her televised persona now crashing into the conversation. "I am posing direct inquiries about accountability, a currency that seems tragically devalued in our times, particularly for those who believe their talent is a shield against consequence. The volley found its target, a direct hit. Kevin Unk's hands moments before at ease were now a white-knuckled grip on the arms of his chair, and when he spoke, his voice was a different instrument, honed to a razor's edge. "Joy, I must insist you stop right there," Kevin commanded. The tone was level, yet beneath it lay a foundation of unshakable firmness. "You are weaving some incredibly grave narratives on live television, and I suggest you become acutely aware of the ground you are choosing to tread upon." But Joy was now in her element, the predator unleashed. This was the very stance that had carved her name into the stone of daytime television. "I am being careful, Kevin. I'm taking meticulous care to pose the questions that demand an answer. The very questions others have been too intimidated to voice." "Intimidated," Kevin echoed, a single eyebrow arching in theatrical disbelief. He tasted the words. "That is a fascinating selection from the lexicon. Joy, are you implying that my colleagues, your peers, have been cowed by my presence?" "I'm implying," Joy shot back, "that it is past time someone asks the necessary questions without fear of bruising delicate egos. Perhaps it's time a voice was given to what every viewer at home is already thinking." A profound quiet fell over the set. The silence was a physical thing, a wire pulled taut to its breaking point. When Kevin's voice finally cut through it, it was a whisper more menacing than any shout. "And pray tell, Joy, what is it that you believe everyone is thinking?" The question was a gauntlet, thrown down, shimmering in the studio lights. Her co-hosts were now visibly panicked, their shifting bodies and frantic exchange glances a silent chorus of alarm. The audience itself could feel it, the chilling sense that this was no longer an interview but a public unraveling. Joy, however, appeared to feed on the escalating chaos. "I think," she declared, "everyone is wondering how a man can simply reappear and expect a hero's welcome as if history has been erased. They are wondering about accountability, about consequences, about the ancient question of whether immense talent grants a man a pass to simply move on." Kevin's reply, when it arrived, was delivered with the chilling precision of a master performer who understands the weight of every single word. "Joy, allow me to ask you a question," Kevin began, his voice now laced with a quiet, undeniable menace. "Are you absolutely certain you wish to continue down this road here on this stage for all to see? Because this is a threshold. Once we cross it, there is no return, and I am not at all convinced you are prepared for where this path ultimately leads." The threat was no longer veiled. It was the central character in the drama, but Joy Behar had forged an empire by never backing down. The glint of danger in his eyes was not a warning to her but an invitation. It was fuel for an inferno that was already raging. "Is that a threat, Kevin?" Joy's voice sliced through the tension, sharp and clear. "Because if it is, I believe our audience has a right to know the true character of the man sitting before them." A soft, mirthless laugh escaped Kevin Unk's lips. "Threatening you, Joy? No, I am attempting to save you from yourself. You are marching into a battle of wits for which you are tragically fatally unarmed, hurling accusations on live television, seemingly without a care for the wreckage." "The only wreckage I am concerned with," Joy retorted, "is what happens when the truth remains buried." She leaned forward, a predator closing in. "And the truth is that certain individuals believe they can launder their reputations with a few curated interviews, expecting the world to develop amnesia. And what version of history do you believe you possess?" "Joy," Kevin countered, his voice dropping to a deceptively gentle register that was more chilling than any shout. "Because I am utterly fascinated to hear the tale you've convinced yourself is real." A silent panic rippled through the set. Joy's co-hosts were now sending frantic unseen signals, with Whoopi attempting a subtle hand gesture, a silent plea for de-escalation. But Joy was locked in, a gladiator who saw only her opponent. The roaring coliseum around them had ceased to exist. "I think what happened," she declared, "is that the powerful were allowed to write their own rules and escape their own consequences." Her voice swelled with conviction, each word a hammer blow, "and I think some of them are now attempting to gaslight the entire world into believing it was all a dream." A long, heavy silence followed. Kevin studied her, a grandmaster calculating 5 moves ahead. When he spoke, his tone carried the quiet, bone-deep authority that had made him a legend. "Joy, you are making a grave and fundamental miscalculation." "Right now," Kevin said, his words measured and precise. "You are confusing a television platform with genuine power. You are mistaking loudness for righteousness. And you are moments away from a very harsh education on the difference. Is that another veiled warning?" Joy demanded, her voice now amplified by the studio's sudden tom-like silence. "Because I've weathered storms from far greater titans than you, and I'm still here." "No, Joy, it's not a warning," Kevin replied, his composure an unbreakable shield. "It is a promise. You want to play this game? Then let us play. But let's be absolutely certain we both understand the rules of engagement." The studio had become a vacuum. The only sound, the faint hum of the cameras. Every crew member was frozen, knowing they were witnessing a line being crossed on national television. "What rule?" Joy asked, and for the first time a tremor, almost imperceptible, entered her voice, a flicker of uncertainty. Kevin smiled. It was a smile from a horror film, all sharp edges and no warmth. "The rules are quite simple, Joy. You demand a conversation about accountability, then let's begin with yours. You want to unearth the past actions of others. Then let's start by excavating your own." "My past actions." Joy laughed, but the sound was brittle, hollow. "What are you even talking about?" "I'm talking about a career meticulously constructed upon the public demolition of people who were in no position to defend themselves," Kevin said, his voice beginning to build like a gathering storm. "I'm talking about the legion of guests who have sat in that very chair. Lambs to the slaughter, ambushed with character assassinations they were never prepared for. Live for the world to see." Joy's face was turning a deep crimson. "That's called journalism, Kevin. That's called asking the hard questions." "No, Joy," he thundered back, the full force of his stage-trained voice finally unleashed. "That's called being a bully with a microphone. And the difference between me and all the others is that I will not sit here and be your next victim. You can't intimidate me," Joy insisted. But the foundation of her voice was clearly shaken. "I'm not trying to intimidate you," Kevin said, his calm now more terrifying than any rage. "I am simply stating that if we are to have a discourse about behavior, let it be an honest one. And honestly, Joy, the trail of destruction you have left throughout your career is far more vast than anything I have ever been accused of." The statement landed with the concussive force of a physical blow. Her mouth gaped, a silent, desperate gasp for words before her voice finally caught. "How could you?" she finally managed, the words laced with venom. "How dare you sit in that chair and try to pin this on me?" "This isn't my doing. I am pinning nothing," Kevin countered. His tone is smooth and cold as polished steel. "I am simply answering your fire with fire. You demanded accountability, so I am asking for yours. You spoke of consequences. Now I am asking about the trail of consequences you've left in your wake." The camera zoomed in as Joy's knuckles turned bone white, her grip on the table the only thing keeping her anchored. "My actions. I have built a career on speaking truth to the powerful." "Your actions," Kevin affirmed, his voice now a rising tide of judgment. "The guests you eviscerated with your televised ambushes. The careers you torched with nothing more than a reckless insinuation. The human beings who fled this studio feeling violated and exposed, all because it made for a riveting segment." "That's not," Joy began, her defense faltering. But Kevin's momentum was unstoppable. "The young actors," he steamrolled on, his voice building like a crescendo in a tragic opera, "who came here to share their dreams and left feeling like they'd survived an assault. The public servants who consented to a dialogue and were instead subjected to a brutal cross-examination. The authors, the singers, the visionaries who came here in good faith, only to be met with your unique and vicious form of public execution." By now, Joy was visibly reeling, her fortress of confidence crumbling to dust before millions. "You don't know the first thing you're talking about," she hissed. "Oh, but I know everything," Kevin retorted, leaning forward, claiming the space between them. "I know because I've talked to the ghosts you created, Joy. I know because this town is smaller than you believe, and its whispers have a way of becoming a roar. They speak of the cold fear that grips them when they are booked on your show. They speak of the dread of facing one of your infamous character assassinations. That is, Joy started, but her voice fractured, betraying the truth. The crack was all the opening he needed. That's what Joy he pressed. His advantage now absolute. That's a lie, is it? Because I have names should you require them. I can tell you all about the promising actress who collapsed with a panic attack in your green room after you spent 10 merciless tearing apart her personal life instead of her film. I can tell you about the musician whose soul you so thoroughly crushed. He still refuses all television appearances to this day. The color drained from Joy's face, leaving a pale, ghostly mask of shock. Her hands began to tremble. The other host looked on helpless, their eyes darting to the control room, praying for a sign and intervention. Anything. "You are lying," Joy whispered. But the accusation was a feather against a hurricane. "Am I?" Kevin Unk's voice dropped to a deadly, intimate quiet. Because the thing about the scales of justice, Joy, is that they eventually have to balance. You demand others account for their sins, but you must also be brought to account for yours. And the record shows your actions have been relentlessly cruel, endlessly destructive, and eternally shielded by the emblem of this very program. With a sudden surge of adrenaline, Joyce shot to her feet, her chair flying back from the force. Her expression was a war between incandescent rage and raw animal panic. "I don't have to sit here and take this," she announced, her voice trembling. "No, you don't," Kevin agreed, his tone returning to an eerie calm. "You can walk away. You can do what you've always done when finally confronted with a reflection you don't like. You can run." The word run hung in the air, an indictment and a challenge. Joy stood frozen. A queen checkmated in her own court. Her chest heaved with ragged breaths as she stared at Kevin, her eyes a storm of fury and utter disbelief. "Run," she echoed, the word cracking under the immense emotional weight. "I have never run from anything in my life," a question hanging in the air like a guillotine. "Haven't you?" Kevin countered, leaning back, not in relaxation but with the chilling poise of a predator who has cornered his prey. "Let's journey back, shall we? To the Broadway producer a mere 3 years ago. The very interview where you leveled charges with no foundation. And the moment he dared to mount a defense, the show miraculously required a commercial break, a direct hit. The color drained from Joy's face. A canvas suddenly wiped clean. "That's not the narrative," she stammered, but her words were vapor. Kevin, the relentless prosecutor, pressed on. "Or shall we recall the documentaries, the woman who came to champion women's rights but you chose instead to dissect her private life? And when she fought back, oh, the gremlins in the machine, a sudden cascade of technical difficulties. A desperate plea escaped her lips. Stop it. A whisper against a hurricane, but Kevin Unk's memory was a vault, and he was just getting started. Remember the environmental activist here to speak on the fate of the planet only to be subjected to a 15-minute inquisition about his failed marriage. His cadence was an engine building steam, a freight train of judgment bearing down, and the cookbook author reduced to tears on this very set because her body became more scrutinized than her culinary creations. The teenage scientist beaming with pride only for you to imply her genius was merely the work of her parents. Each memory was a stone, and the weight was becoming unbearable. And with every blow, Joy visibly diminished, collapsing inward. Her colleagues, her on-air family, now stared, their expressions a mixture of shock and dawning horror. Those were legitimate questions, she offered, a defense that crumbled into dust as it left her own lips. Were they truly Kevin's raised eyebrow was a verdict in itself? Or were they the poisoned arrows of someone who mistakes cruelty for journalism, someone who believes that discomfort is a substitute for accountability? The tremors began in her hands, a violent quake as she clung to her chair for support. "You have no idea what this job demands." "Oh, I understand precisely," Kevin retorted, his tone dropping to absolute zero. "I know the daily performance, the mask you wear, the relentless demand to deliver what the audience craves. The difference, Joy, is that my act doesn't leave a trail of broken lives in its wake. I've helped people," she cried, a weak, desperate volley. "I've highlighted crucial issues. You've highlighted your own ego," he fired back. A perfect, brutal return. "You've twisted this platform into a pulpit for your own vanity, your need to be the inquisitor no matter the human cost. And then the collapse. The tears were no longer silent. They were a torrent of public humiliation. Her composure shattered into a million pieces, mascara tracing the path of her downfall. You can't say this to me. And why is that? Kevin inquired, the edge of his voice softening not with pity but with a surgeon's precision. But the intensity remained, a focused beam of truth. Is it because the roles are reversed? Because for the first time you're not the one launching the attack from the safety of the host's chair? The white flag was raised. I'm done. The words fractured, her voice shattering on the air. I am done with this. Are you truly? Kevin pressed, making her stay in the fire. Because this right now is your gift to others. This is the sensation of being dissected for sport right where I sit. This is the anatomy. Oh,